The alarm did not beep. It screamed. 6:43 p.m. on a Friday, checkout lane 4, every head turned. The security gate flashed red and the young guard near the exit lifted his hand like he was stopping traffic. "Madame, step aside." People stared before she even understood what was happening. Lena Carter stood frozen with a paper bag of groceries digging into her fingers. Milk, cereal, store-brand coffee, a pack of ground turkey, $48.72. She still had the receipt folded in her palm. "I paid." Her voice came out thin, too thin. The guard did not look at her. He looked at the crowd. "We need to check your bag." The words were loud enough for everyone to hear. A woman behind her shifted her purse closer to her chest. A teenage boy raised his phone slightly, pretending to text. Lena felt heat rush up her neck. Not anger yet, just shame. Hot and immediate. "I paid," she repeated. "I can show you the receipt." "Loss prevention needs to review something," the guard said. Something. That word hit harder than accusation. Inside the store, the fluorescent lights hummed like insects. The smell of bakery bread and floor cleaner mixed in the air. A toddler cried near produce. Someone laughed at the customer service. Life continued. Except hers had just tilted. 2 minutes earlier, she had been thinking about the overdue electric bill and whether she could stretch the turkey into 2 dinners. Now, she was being escorted past seasonal decorations into a small gray office with a metal desk and a flickering monitor. The door closed. The world shrank. There were 3 of them inside. The young guard, a middle-aged woman with a tight ponytail and a laminated badge that said Asset Protection Manager, and a man she had never seen before wearing a polo shirt with the store logo stitched over his heart. The manager spoke first. "We have footage of you concealing merchandise." "Concealing?" Lena blinked. "What merchandise?" "You placed an item into your tote bag in aisle 12. Aisle 12 was cleaning supplies. I bought dish soap last week." The man in the polo leaned back. "So, you are denying it." She felt something shift in her stomach. Not fear anymore, confusion turning into anger. "I did not steal anything." The manager rotated the monitor toward her. Grainy footage, black and white. There she was, bending slightly, reaching. The camera angle was from above. It cut off her hands. It looked like she slid something into her bag, but the bag had been empty. She had walked in with just her phone and wallet. "That is not what happened," she said. "It clearly is," the man replied. "And then the worst part, we will need to contact the police if you do not cooperate." Police. The word landed like a brick. Lena worked at a dental office. She had a 10-year-old son. She had never had so much as a parking ticket. "You are making a mistake." The manager folded her arms. "Mistakes cost us thousands every month." That sentence told Lena everything. They had already decided. Outside the office, shoppers pushed carts past Halloween candy displays. A radio played a soft pop song overhead. Inside, Lena felt something crack. "I want to see the full footage. We showed you what matters. I want to see before that. And after." The man in the polo hesitated for a second too long. "Why?" "Because you cut it." Silence. The guard shifted his weight. The manager exhaled slowly like she was dealing with a difficult child. "Madam, if you did not take anything, then there is nothing to worry about." The sentence was smooth, polished, and completely false. Lena felt her hands begin to shake. She hated that. Hated that her body betrayed her first. "I want the full footage," she repeated. The man tapped the keyboard reluctantly. The screen rewound. Aisle 12. There she was again, standing in front of dish sponges. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. Her shoulders slumped slightly. That was when she had read the message from her landlord. Rent increase starting next month. She had sighed, shifted her bag on her shoulder, Then she bent down. The manager paused it. Right there. But Lena leaned forward. Play it. The video continued. Her hand reached lower. Not into her bag, under the shelf. She pulled out a small bottle. She stared at it, then placed it back. She had been reading the price tag. The bottle had fallen from the shelf. The camera angle made it look like she slid it sideways. But she had put it back. Keep playing. The footage rolled forward. She walked away, bag still flat, no bulge, no movement. The man in the polo stiffened. The manager leaned closer to the screen. Rewind. They rewound, played it again, this time slower. Her hand, the bottle, the shelf. The bag never opened. The silence changed. It was not accusation anymore. It was calculation. The manager cleared her throat. There must have been another camera angle. Then show it. The words came sharper now. For the first time, Lena felt something other than humiliation. She felt anger steadying her spine. The man clicked through camera feeds. A different angle appeared. Clearer. Color. This one showed the aisle from the front. It showed her bending. It showed her lifting the bottle from the floor. It showed her putting it back, and it showed her bag. Closed. Empty. The guard swallowed. The manager sat back slowly. The hum of the monitor filled the room. So, the man in the polo spoke carefully. It appears we misinterpreted the footage. Misinterpreted? Lena let out a short laugh that did not sound like her. You threatened to call the police. We follow procedure. Procedure had almost turned into handcuffs. She imagined being led out past checkout lanes. Her son seeing her in the back of a patrol car. Her employer hearing about it. A rumor spreading through town. The manager stood. We apologize for the inconvenience. $48.72 worth of groceries. And the cost of being publicly labeled a thief. Lena did not move. She thought she would cry. Instead, she felt something colder. Who else have you done this to? The question hung in the air. The manager did not answer. That told her enough. When Lena walked back through the store, the music was still playing. The woman with the purse was gone, the teenage boy too, but she could still feel their eyes. She passed aisle 12 again. The bottle of cleaner sat perfectly upright. She stared at it, a small stupid object that had almost shattered her life. At the exit, the guard avoided her gaze. The automatic doors slid open. Cold evening air hit her face. She stood there for a moment, breathing. Then something else surfaced. Not just anger. Resolve. Because as she replayed the footage in her mind, she realized something. The first clip they showed her. The black and white one. It was cropped. Someone had trimmed it. Someone had chosen the frame that made her look guilty. That was not a mistake. That was narrative. And narratives could ruin people. She drove home with her groceries untouched in the passenger seat. Her phone buzzed again. Her sister asking if she could pick up their mother from physical therapy next week. Normal life continuing. But Lena was no longer in a normal place. At home, her son Caleb ran to the door. Mom, did you get the cereal with the marshmallows? Yeah. She forced a smile. He grabbed the bag and ran to the kitchen. The house smelled faintly of laundry detergent and old carpet. Safe, but the humiliation replayed again. Step aside, we have footage, police. That night after Caleb went to bed, Lena sat at the kitchen table with the receipt in front of her. She searched the store name online. Reviews popped up. Dozens of complaints about rude staff. A few about false accusations. One from 3 months ago. They detained my father for 40 minutes and never apologized. Her stomach tightened. She scrolled further. There it was. A lawsuit filed 2 years earlier. Wrongful detention. Settled quietly. Lena leaned back. The ceiling fan clicked softly overhead. This was not about a bottle of cleaner. This was about a system that assumed guilt first, and she had almost folded under it. She imagined if she had panicked, if she had apologized just to make it stop, if she had signed something, what would have happened then? Her face flushed, remembering how small she had felt, how quickly they had cornered her, how practiced their voices were. That was when the weakness hit, not tears, but doubt. What if they try again? What if they flag her name? What if next time there is no second camera angle? She hated that thought, hated that part of her still felt afraid. She pressed her palms against the table, breathing slowly. Then she opened her laptop. If there was one thing Lena understood, it was paperwork. At the dental office, she handled insurance disputes all day, claims denied, codes misread, patients blamed for mistakes that were not theirs. She had learned something important. Documentation was power. The next morning, she returned to the store. Not to shop, to request the footage formally. The manager was not at the front desk. A younger employee called her back. The same office, same metal desk. I would like a copy of all footage involving me yesterday between 6:30 and 7 p.m. The employee blinked. Why? Because I was accused of theft, and I want records. He shifted uncomfortably. I do not know if we can do that. Then, I would like your corporate contact information. Her voice did not shake this time. It was steady, controlled. The humiliation had hardened into something precise. Within minutes, she had an email address and a case number scribbled on a sticky note. As she walked out, she noticed something new. A camera above the exit door, pointed directly at customers as they left. Watching, always watching. But now she was watching back, and somewhere inside the store system. In a server room, humming quietly. Their own camera had already said otherwise. They just had not expected her to listen. This was not over, because humiliation does not fade quietly, it echoes. And Lena was done swallowing it. The email came at 9:12 a.m., corporate guest relations, subject line neutral, almost friendly. We are sorry for your recent experience, and we take these matters seriously. Our internal review confirms that no theft occurred. We apologize for the misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Lena read the word 3 times. It still tasted wrong. There was no mention of the cropped footage. No explanation for why the first clip had been edited. No acknowledgement that police had been mentioned. Just smooth language. Like a dentist telling a patient they might feel a little pressure before drilling into bone. She sat at her desk at the dental office, the faint smell of fluoride in the air, the printer spitting out insurance forms behind her. A patient argued softly at the front counter about a copay. Life humming. Her coworker Jasmine leaned over the cubicle wall. You good, you look pale, just tired. That was easier than explaining how close she had come to being handcuffed in front of a crowd. During lunch, she stepped outside with her phone. She dialed the number listed in the email. After 3 transfers, she reached someone named Victor in risk management. His voice was calm, trained. Miss Carter, we have reviewed the incident. The associate involved has been reminded of proper procedures. Reminded. So, cropping footage is proper procedure. Silence. Excuse me. The first clip shown to me was edited. There was a pause long enough for Lena to picture him pulling up a screen. The footage was not edited, madam. It was zoomed for clarity. Zoomed. It had cut out her hand placing the bottle back. Zoomed footage does not remove context. Another pause. Our team acts in good faith to protect store assets and what protects customers from your team. Her voice stayed steady, but her chest felt tight. Victor cleared his throat. If you would like, we can offer you a gift card for the inconvenience. There it was. A dollar amount to make the embarrassment disappear. How much? $50. Lena almost laughed. $48.72 of groceries had nearly cost her dignity, and they were offering $50 to erase it. I am not interested in a gift card. What resolution would you prefer? The question irritated her, as if this were a broken blender. I want written confirmation that the footage was misrepresented. I want assurance that my name is not flagged in your system. And I want confirmation that your employees are trained not to threaten police without evidence. That is a lot to request. It is less than what you almost did to me. Another silence. We will review your concerns. The call ended. Lena stared at the sky above the parking lot. Pale blue. A plane cutting a white line through it. Her hands trembled again. Not from fear, from adrenaline. Part of her wanted to let it go. Caleb needed help with math homework. Rent was increasing. She did not have time for corporate battles. But another part remembered the woman clutching her purse. The teenage boy lifting his phone. The word, police. If she walked away quietly, they would do it again. That evening, she pulled up the store's public court records. The prior lawsuit had settled confidentially, but the complaint was still visible. Wrongful detention, defamation, emotional distress. Her pulse quickened. She downloaded the document. The description matched her experience almost exactly. Detained based on incomplete footage. Police mentioned before verification. Customer released without written apology. Different name, same pattern. Lena felt a wave of nausea. This was not random. It was policy disguised as caution. She printed the complaint and laid it on the kitchen table beside her receipt. Paper next to paper. Evidence next to evidence. Caleb wandered in. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Work stuff." He nodded and poured himself cereal. The marshmallows floated to the top. He ate around the flakes first. Normal, ordinary. She watched him and felt a flicker of doubt. What if pushing this backfires? What if they dig into her life? What if her employer gets dragged into it? Her stomach twisted. She was not a hero. She was a single mother who balanced bills in a notebook. She lost her temper sometimes. She'd forgot to return library books on time. She had cried in her car last month when rent went up. She was not powerful. And that was exactly why this mattered. The next morning, she requested the full surveillance file in writing. She cited her state's consumer protection statute. She referenced the prior lawsuit. She did not threaten. She documented. 3 days later, another email arrived, this one shorter. "We have completed our internal review. There was no misconduct. We consider the matter closed." Closed. They had not answered her questions. They had not addressed the cropped clip. They had not confirmed her name was clear. Lena felt something snap. Not loud, quiet. She forwarded the entire email chain to a local attorney whose name appeared on the old lawsuit. Within an hour, she received a call. "This is Daniel Ruiz." His voice was direct. No corporate polish. "I handled the case you referenced. I figured. Tell me what happened." She did. From the alarm screaming to the cropped footage to the gift card offer. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he exhaled slowly. They are still doing it. Doing what? Pushing until someone folds. Lena pressed her fingers against her temple. "I almost did, that is the point." The sentence sat heavy. Daniel asked one more question. Did they mention police before verifying the second angle? Yes, that changes things. Her pulse jumped. How? False threat of arrest can escalate a detention claim. The words were clinical, but they felt like oxygen. "You think I have a case. I think they have a pattern. Pattern." The word echoed in her mind. He explained next steps. Demand letter, preservation of footage, formal complaint. It sounded overwhelming. It also sounded like structure. When the call ended, Lena sat very still. Fear crept back in. Legal action meant exposure. It meant her name on documents. It meant time she did not have. But humiliation had already exposed her. In aisle 12, under fluorescent lights. She closed her eyes. For a moment she saw again the cropped clip. Her bent figure. the assumption built around it. A story written without her voice. Her weakness surfaced then. What if I am overreacting? What if this is petty? What if they crush me? She hated that spiral. Hated how quickly she doubted herself. She opened her eyes and looked at the printed complaint from 2 years ago. Different woman. Same words. Wrongful detention. Emotional distress. No one had stood up publicly. The case had settled quietly, which meant nothing had changed. Lena inhaled slowly. Her voice had shaken in that gray office, but it had not broken, and their own camera had told the truth. They had just hoped she would not insist on seeing it. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Daniel. Proceed. Her thumb hovered for a second. Then she hit send. The echo of humiliation shifted again, this time into motion. Mediation was scheduled for a Thursday morning at 10. Neutral office building downtown. Gray carpet, frosted glass doors, coffee machine humming in the corner. Lena had taken the day off work. She wore her one navy blazer, the one she usually saved for parent-teacher conferences or formal meetings at the dental office. It felt slightly tight at the shoulders. She had gained a few pounds over the winter and never replaced it. A small detail. But it made her aware of her body in a room where she already felt exposed. Daniel met her in the lobby. He was younger than she expected. Early 40s. Calm eyes. Simple suit, no flashy briefcase. Are you ready? No, he nodded once. That is normal. Inside the mediation room, the store's representatives were already seated. The asset protection manager, the same woman with the tight ponytail, and a new face. Corporate counsel, mid-50s, polished, neutral smile that did not reach his eyes. Lena's stomach tightened instantly. The manager glanced at her briefly, then away. No apology in her expression. Just calculation. They all sat. The mediator explained the process in a slow, almost soothing tone. This is a confidential discussion. The goal is resolution. Resolution. The word floated in the air. Lena folded her hands to stop them from shaking. Corporate counsel spoke first. We regret that Miss Carter felt embarrassed. Felt. There it was again, as if humiliation were a mood swing. The incident was a brief investigative detention based on reasonable suspicion. The manager kept her eyes on the table. Lena felt heat climb up her neck. You showed me cropped footage. The room went quiet. The counsel turned slightly toward her. The footage was zoomed for clarity. No. Her voice was steady but tight. It cut off my hand, placing the item back on the shelf. The manager shifted in her chair. It was a fast review process. Fast enough to threaten police before confirming. Silence. Lana could hear the faint buzz of overhead lights. Corporate counsel leaned forward slightly. Our associates are trained to mention law enforcement as part of protocol when theft is suspected. Before verifying evidence, yes, the admission hung there. Lena felt something shift, a crack in their smooth language. The mediator cleared his throat. Let us focus on impact. Daniel spoke calmly. My client experienced public humiliation. The alarm sounded. She was escorted in view of customers. Police were mentioned. Footage was misrepresented. Corporate counsel exhaled softly. There was no physical restraint. The sentence landed hard, as if because no one touched her, nothing happened. Lena felt her control slip for a second. You did not need to touch me. You already decided who I was. Her voice rose slightly. The manager finally looked at her. We did not decide who you were. You showed me a story that made me a thief. The room felt smaller. For a moment, Lena hated herself for sounding emotional, too intense, too dramatic. This was the weakness she feared, that they would label her unstable. But then she remembered the woman clutching her purse, the teenage boy lifting his phone. That was real. Corporate counsel folded his hands. What would you consider fair resolution? There it was again, transactional. Lena swallowed. She had thought about this all week, not just numbers, terms, written acknowledgement that footage was incomplete, formal letter clearing her name, revised training requiring full footage review before mentioning police, and financial compensation. Daniel listed the terms calmly. Corporate counsel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly at the training requirement. That is operational. Yes, Daniel replied, that is the point. The manager shifted again. We cannot admit wrongdoing. You already admitted protocol allows police threats before verification. The mediator raised a hand gently. Let us avoid escalation. But escalation had already happened in aisle 12, under fluorescent lights. The conversation paused while parties separated into different rooms. Lena and Daniel sat alone. Her hands were trembling now. I sound crazy. You sound affected. That is different. She had stared at the carpet pattern. What if they walk away? Then we consider filing. Court, public record, exposure. Her pulse quickened. Part of her wanted to settle quickly, take the money, end it. Another part wanted something harder, change. She looked at Daniel. Be honest. Am I overreaching? He shook his head slowly. You're asking them to stop a pattern. The word again. Pattern? After 40 minutes, the mediator returned. They're willing to offer compensation significantly higher than the gift card. No apology language, no admission of wrongdoing, no training revision, just money. Lena felt disappointment hit first. Of course, easier to pay than to change. How much? The number was higher than she expected. Enough to cover several months of rent. Enough to breathe. Her chest tightened. That money could make life easier. Caleb's school supplies, car repairs, savings. But it would leave the language intact, reasonable suspicion, protocol, no misconduct. She felt herself split in two. The practical mother, the humiliated woman in aisle 12. If I take this, nothing changes, she whispered. Daniel did not answer immediately. Settlements often do not change systems. They compensate individuals. Compensate. The word felt thin. The mediator watched her quietly. The room seemed to hold its breath. Lena closed her eyes for a second. She saw again the cropped clip, the chosen frame, the story written without her. Her weakness surged. I do not know if I have the strength for court. That was the truth. Court would mean testimony, cross-examination, headlines. She was not fearless. She was tired. The mediator spoke gently. You do not need to decide this second. But she knew. Whatever she chose would echo. Money or message. Silence. Then Lena opened her eyes. And for the first time since the alarm screamed at 6:43 p.m., she felt something different. Not just anger, not just fear. Clarity beginning to form. They had used their own camera to accuse her. Now, their own words were exposing them. The question was whether she wanted a quiet compensation or public record. And for the first time, the decision was hers. The number still echoed in her head. Several months of rent, security, breathing room, Caleb's shoes that were getting too tight, the brake pads that squealed every morning, the electric bill that never seemed to shrink. Money was not abstract, it was groceries and gas and sleep. Daniel watched her carefully. If you counter, we can push for limited language. Sometimes companies will agree to neutral clarification without full admission. Neutral clarification. Another polished phrase. What would that look like, she asked. A statement that the footage review was incomplete before escalation. No use of the word misconduct, but acknowledgement of procedural oversight. Oversight. Lena almost smiled at the vocabulary gymnastics. They could bend words into anything. The mediator stepped out again to relay the counter-proposal. Lena leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling tiles. She imagined court, sitting in a witness box, corporate counsel dissecting her reactions. Is it true you felt embarrassed? How embarrassed? On a scale. Did anyone call you a thief directly? Were you physically restrained? No. No, no. She imagined the defense painting her as dramatic, financially motivated, overreacting to standard policy. Her throat tightened. I am not strong like that, she murmured. Daniel tilted his head slightly. You came back the next day and demanded footage. That is strength. That was anger, she replied. Sometimes they are the same. The door opened. The mediator returned. They are willing to include language stating that the initial footage review did not include full contextual angles prior to mention of law enforcement. Lena let the sentence settle. Not an apology, but a crack, and the compensation remains on the table. Yes, she folded her hands again. Her fingers felt steadier now. What about training reviews, she asked. The mediator hesitated. They are open to internal review, but not written commitment. Internal review, unseen, unprovable. Lena felt the old frustration rise. If no one sees it, how do we know it happens? Daniel spoke carefully. We can request that the clarification letter be addressed to Miss Carter and retained in company records. That creates traceable precedent. Precedent. That word mattered. The mediator nodded slowly. I can present that. Another wait. Another stretch of fluorescent silence. Lena's mind wandered unexpectedly. To aisle 12. To the bottle under the shelf. To the way she had bent down without thinking. Such a small movement, so easily misread. She wondered how many small movements in life were misread. How often narratives were built from partial angles. The door opened again. They agreed to the clarification letter retained in records. Compensation unchanged. No admission of wrongdoing, but acknowledgement of incomplete review prior to escalation. Lena exhaled slowly. It was not perfect, it was not public, but it was written, documented. A deviation from their original denial. She looked at Daniel. Is this enough to create precedent? Yes. If it happens again, there will be a record that they were warned. The word felt satisfying. Not revenge, not humiliation in return, but warning. She felt something loosen in her chest. I will accept. The paperwork took another hour. Signatures, initials, formal language. Her name printed clearly at the bottom of the agreement. Not suspect, not detainee. Miss Lena Carter. When it was done, the corporate counsel extended a hand. We are glad this is resolved. Resolved. She shook his hand. His grip was firm, controlled. But she noticed something subtle. He avoided her eyes for half a second too long. The manager did not speak at all. Outside the building, the air felt sharper. Late afternoon light glinted off car windshields. Daniel walked her to her vehicle. You did well. I almost did not. But you did. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment after he left, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. This was not a courtroom victory. There would be no headline, no dramatic speech. But there would be a letter in corporate records acknowledging incomplete review before threatening police. There would be compensation that would steady her life for a while. And there would be something else, a shift inside her. She had walked into that mediation afraid of being seen as difficult. She walked out having insisted on language, on record, on context. The alarm at 6:43 p.m. still echoed in memory. The heat of humiliation had not vanished, but it had transformed, not into bitterness, into boundary. As she drove home, she passed the grocery store. For a second, she considered turning in, testing herself. Instead, she kept driving. Not out of fear, out of choice, because this time, the narrative had not been cropped, and that mattered. The letter arrived 10 days later. Thick envelope. Corporate return address. Her name typed cleanly across the front. Lena stood at the kitchen counter, holding it longer than necessary. Caleb was in the living room arguing with a video game character about a missed jump. Ordinary noise. Ordinary evening. Her hands were steady when she opened it. Inside was a single page. Formal language, polished tone. The company acknowledged that the initial footage review did not include full contextual angles prior to mention of law enforcement. The matter had been resolved through mediation. The document would be retained in company records. No apology, no admission, but acknowledgement. She read it twice, then once more. There it was in ink. Incomplete review prior to escalation. Not misunderstanding, not inconvenience, escalation. Her chest tightened unexpectedly, not with anger this time. With release. She sat down at the table. For weeks, her body had been braced without her noticing. Jaw tight, shoulders high, sleep shallow. Now, something softened. Not everything, but something. Caleb wandered in. "What's that? Just paperwork. Good paperwork." He nodded, uninterested, and grabbed a granola bar. She watched him tear open the wrapper. Crumbs falling onto the floor she would later sweep. Life moving forward. The compensation transferred into her account 2 days later. The number looked unreal for a moment. She paid off the overdue electric bill immediately. Scheduled car maintenance. Transferred a portion into savings. Practical moves. Responsible. But she felt no triumph, no dramatic victory. Just steadiness returning. That night, she drove past the grocery store again. This time, she slowed. The parking lot lights buzzed softly in the dark. People moved in and out through automatic doors. Carts clattered. Normal. Her heart rate increased slightly. The memory was still there. Step aside. We have footage. Police. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel. She could keep avoiding it. Choose another store forever. But avoidance felt like surrender. Not legal surrender. Internal surrender. She turned into the lot. Parked. Sat for a full minute, breathing. "You are allowed to shop here," she told herself quietly. "You did nothing wrong." Inside, the air smelled the same. It's a bakery bread and floor cleaner. The music overhead was different now. A slow country song. She grabbed a cart. Metal wheels squeaking slightly. Every camera suddenly felt visible. Above produce. Near frozen foods. At the exit. Watching. Her pulse ticked higher. She forced herself toward aisle 12. The cleaning supplies were fully stocked. The same brand bottle sat on the shelf. She stared at it. Her weakness surfaced again. What if something goes wrong again? What if another alarm screams? What if people remember? It was irrational, but it was real. She reached down deliberately, lifted the bottle, turned it in her hand, read the price, placed it back, slowly, intentionally. Then she stood upright. Nothing happened. No alarm, no guard, no red light flashing. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and a man comparing paper towel brands beside her. Her breathing steadied. She moved through the rest of the store. Milk, eggs, bread. Small normal decisions. At checkout, she paid. $42 and change. The receipt printed cleanly. She folded it carefully and placed it in her wallet. When she walked toward the exit, her stomach tightened automatically. The gates stayed silent. The doors opened. Cold air brushed her face. No one stopped her. In the car, she let out a long breath she had not realized she was holding. The humiliation had not disappeared. It had left a mark. But the mark no longer defined the space. She drove home with groceries in the passenger seat again. Only this time the bag felt lighter. Not because it weighed less, because she did not carry the same story with it. At a red light, her phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. "Are you coming to the staff barbecue Saturday?" She smiled faintly. Yes. Life had continued through everything, and now she was re-entering it without shrinking. Later that night, after Caleb was asleep, she took the letter from the envelope again, ran her fingers across the printed words. Incomplete review prior to escalation. It was not poetic, it was not dramatic, but it was record. And record meant the next person might not be alone in a gray office staring at the cropped footage. The next person might ask to see the full angle, might insist, might refuse the gift card. Lena folded the letter carefully and placed it in a folder labeled Personal Records. Not to obsess, not to relive, but to remember. Humiliation had tried to write her into a smaller version of herself. Fear had almost agreed. Instead, she had insisted on context, on documentation, on boundary. The store lights glowed faintly in the distance through her kitchen window. Ordinary building, ordinary cameras. But now there was something in their files that had not existed before. A warning. And somewhere inside Lena, something had shifted permanently. Not into someone louder, not into someone harder. Into someone who would no longer accept a cropped story as truth. 2 months passed. The letter stayed in its folder. The money settled into practical places. Life smoothed out on the surface. But something else had changed. Lena began noticing things she used to ignore. At work, when an insurance company denied a claim without explanation, she no longer accepted the first answer. She asked for full documentation, requested timestamps, referenced prior approvals. Her co-workers teased her gently. "You're on a mission lately." "Maybe I am." She said it lightly, but it was true. She had felt what it was like to be framed by partial information. Now, she refused partial information everywhere. One Thursday afternoon, a patient stormed into the office lobby. Middle-aged man, construction boots, red face. "You people charged me twice." The front desk assistant looked overwhelmed. Lena stepped forward. "Let me see the statement." He shoved the paper toward her. 2 charges, same date, same amount. It looked suspicious, but Lena checked the system. One was pending, one was processed. The bank displayed them separately. She turned the monitor slightly so he could see. Not just telling him. Showing him. Here is the timestamp. This one will fall off. The man's shoulders slowly lowered. "So, I'm not being robbed. No, just overlapping authorizations." He nodded awkwardly. "Sorry I yelled. It's okay." She understood something now about how quickly fear turns into accusation. How fragile trust is when information feels incomplete. That night, she received an unexpected email. A subject line simple. "Grocery store incident." Her pulse jumped instinctively. It was not from corporate. It was from a woman named Marissa. "I found your name through public mediation records." "I think something similar happened to me at the same store last week." Lena stared at the screen. Similar. Her chest tightened. Marissa described being stopped near self-checkout. Alarm triggered. Accused of skipping an item. Police mentioned before verification. Released after second camera angle reviewed. No apology. No written acknowledgement. Just verbal dismissal. Lena felt heat rise in her chest again. The pattern, it had not stopped. She replied carefully, "I'm sorry that happened to you." Did they provide written clarification? No, they said it was a misunderstanding. That word again, misunderstanding. Lena closed her eyes briefly. Her settlement agreement did not prevent her from speaking about her experience. It only restricted certain internal details. But the record existed. There had been warning. She typed slowly. "You have the right to request full footage and written confirmation of incomplete review prior to escalation." She hesitated. Was she overstepping? Was she becoming the difficult one she once feared? Her weakness surfaced again. What if this drags me back in? What if they retaliate? What if I become known as the woman who sues? She stared at the blank space on the screen. Then she added, "If you need contact information for the attorney who handled my case, I can share it." She hit send before she could rethink it. The next morning, Marissa replied immediately, "Yes, please." Lena forwarded Daniel's contact. Her stomach felt tight all day. She kept checking her phone, as if expecting backlash. Nothing came. A week later, Daniel called. "You referred someone?" "Yes." He sounded almost impressed. "She has strong documentation, and this time there are witnesses willing to provide statements." Witnesses, public. This would not stay quiet. Lena felt a complicated rush. Satisfaction, concern, validation. "You think they will fight harder?" "Probably. Pattern cases get expensive." Expensive, the word had weight. She thought of the compensation she had accepted. Was it enough to offset their ongoing behavior? Was it simply a cost of doing business for them? That thought unsettled her. That evening, she drove past the store again. Not to shop, just passing through town. She noticed something new near the exit. A small sign posted beside the security gate. "If an alarm sounds, associates will verify footage before escalation." Her breath caught. It was subtle, easy to miss. But it had not been there before. She parked briefly and walked inside. The manager was not visible. The security guard was someone different. Younger, nervous posture. She pretended to browse near the exit. Watched how customers moved through. Watched how the guard responded when a cartwheel bumped the gate accidentally. He did not immediately raise his voice. He checked something on a handheld device first, then nodded. No escalation. Lena felt something quiet settle inside her. The sign did not mention her name. It did not apologize. It did not declare reform, but it existed. Policy shifting, even slightly, because someone refused to accept a cropped story. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Marissa. They agreed to mediation. Lena stared at the text. The pattern was no longer invisible. It had been named, recorded. Challenged twice. She felt proud and uneasy because challenging patterns invites resistance. She was not naive. Corporations adapt, protect, defend. But now there were two records. Two documented acknowledgments of incomplete review before escalation. That was harder to dismiss. As she walked out of the store, the automatic door slid open smoothly. No alarm, no red light, just evening air and the faint scent of rain. Her humiliation had once felt like an isolated incident. Now it looked like the first crack in something larger. She was not the loudest person in a room. She was not fearless. Her hands had shaken more than once. She had doubted herself repeatedly, but she had insisted on full footage, on full context. And somewhere in a corporate database, the phrase "incomplete review prior to escalation" existed twice now. Patterns weaken when named, and Lena was no longer afraid of saying the name out loud. The second mediation did not stay quiet. Maris's case unfolded differently. There were witnesses this time. A couple who had been standing behind her at self-checkout. A college student who recorded part of the exchange on her phone when the word "police" was mentioned too quickly. Daniel called Lena late one evening. They are pushing back harder, but the witnesses complicate it for them. Complicate. Lena sat at the edge of her couch, Caleb asleep down the hall. Are they denying again? Yes. Same language. Reasonable suspicion. Brief detention. The repetition made her stomach tighten. Same script. Different woman, Daniel continued. But this time, we have video from a bystander. It shows the associate threatening police before reviewing the second angle. Lena closed her eyes. That exact moment, she could feel it in her body. The shift from confusion to fear when authority is invoked prematurely. What happens next? She asked. If they refuse to revise policy publicly, this may move to court. Court. The word hit differently now. Not abstract, not distant. It meant headlines, depositions, media. She felt an unexpected surge of dread. This was bigger than her now. You okay? Daniel asked. I didn't expect it to keep happening this fast. He was quiet for a second. Patterns accelerate when challenged. She hung up and sat still. The living room lamp cast a warm yellow glow over the carpet. The house was peaceful. Too peaceful compared to the storm building elsewhere. The next week, an article appeared online. Local woman alleges wrongful detention at grocery store. Marissa's name, not Lena's. But the details were familiar. Alarm. Escorted to back office, police mentioned prematurely. Lena read the article 3 times. Comments underneath ranged from supportive to cruel. People steal all the time. Stores have the right to protect themselves. Maybe she looked suspicious. The words made her chest ache. Looked suspicious. That phrase again. Invisible judgment attached to posture, clothing, hesitation at a price tag. She closed the browser. For the first time since her own mediation, fear returned in a new form. What if my name comes up? What if someone connects the cases? What if this affects Caleb? Her weakness surfaced sharply. She had chosen quiet resolution. Now, quiet was dissolving. At work, Jasmine mentioned the article casually. "Did you see that grocery store drama online?" Lena's throat tightened. "Yeah, I saw it. People are wild in the comments." "Yeah." She kept her voice neutral. Inside, her pulse raced. She felt exposed without being named. That night, she received another email, this one from someone she did not know. Subject line simple. "Thank you. It was from an older man. I was accused at that store last year but never pursued anything. I saw the article and wondered if it was the same place. I wish I'd pushed back." Lena stared at the screen. Wish I had pushed back. She felt a strange mixture of validation and sadness. How many quiet stories had never reached mediation? How many had accepted the gift card? The next morning, Daniel called again. Media interest is increasing. They are considering a broader piece about loss prevention practices. Lena swallowed. Does that involve me? Possibly. They know there was a prior confidential mediation. They're asking if the pattern was flagged before. Flagged. Her letter. Incomplete review prior to escalation. The documented warning. If she spoke, it could strengthen Marissa's case. If she stayed silent, she protected her privacy. The split returned. Mother. Witness. "I don't want Caleb dragged into this," she said quietly. "That is understandable. But silence also protects them." The sentence landed hard. She stood by the kitchen window and looked out at the street. A neighbor walking a dog. A car driving past slowly. Ordinary life continuing. Humiliation had once felt like something she needed to erase. Now it felt like something others were still enduring. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. "They offered settlement with policy review language. I think they're scared of it going public." Scared. Lena let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Fear shifting direction. For once, it was not only on her side of the table. Later that evening, she sat with Caleb at the dining table while he worked on spelling words. She watched him write carefully. Erase, rewrite, try again. Mistakes were part of learning, but refusing to correct them was something else. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway. Opened her email, composed a short message to Daniel. "If media asks, I am willing to confirm that there was a prior mediation involving incomplete footage review before escalation. No personal details." She read it twice. Her thumb hovered. This was exposure. Not dramatic, not loud, but visible. She hit send. Immediately, her heart began pounding. She leaned back against the wall, closed her eyes. "You are not doing this for attention," she told herself. "You are doing it for context, for full footage, for the next person in aisle 12. Her weakness did not disappear. It stayed with her. A quiet tremor beneath the decision. But she did not retreat from it. She had once been the woman in the gray office staring at the cropped footage. Now she was choosing to widen the frame. And even if her voice shook when quoted, Even if strangers debated her online, the narrative would not be trimmed so easily again, because incomplete review before escalation was no longer buried in a file. It was beginning to surface, and this time more than one camera was watching. The reporter called on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was measured. Curious, not aggressive. "Miss Carter, I understand you were involved in a prior mediation with the same store regarding loss prevention procedures." Lena stood in the break room at work, staring at the vending machine as if choosing snacks. "Yes." Her throat felt dry. "I can confirm there was mediation involving incomplete footage review before mention of law enforcement. I cannot share settlement details." The reporter paused briefly. So they were aware of procedural issues before this recent incident. There was documented acknowledgement that full contextual footage had not been reviewed prior to escalation. She kept her tone calm. Precise, not emotional. The way she had learned to speak in that gray office. "Thank you," the reporter said. "That helps clarify pattern concerns." Pattern. Again, that word. When the call ended, Lena felt her pulse racing. Jasmine walked in, holding a yogurt. "You look like you just ran a mile. Just a call." She forced a small smile. The article was published 2 days later. This time, the headline was broader. Multiple customers allege premature escalation by grocery chain security. Lena's name was included. Briefly, a prior mediation acknowledged incomplete review before escalation, according to Lena Carter, who confirmed documentation exists. Her chest tightened, seeing her name in print. It was surreal, like reading about someone else. The comments were mixed again. Some supportive, some defensive, some dismissive. "People need to stop playing victim. Stores are losing money every day. Maybe follow the rules." Lena closed the comment section quickly. Her weakness surged unexpectedly. Had she overstepped? Had she invited unnecessary scrutiny? At dinner, Caleb looked up from his plate. "Mom, someone at school said your name was online." Her fork froze midair. What did they say? Just that it was in an article. Tyler's dad reads local news. She swallowed carefully. It was about something that happened at a store a while ago. "Did you steal something?" The question was innocent, pure. It hit harder than any comment section. "No." She met his eyes. "I was accused of something I didn't do, and I made sure it was corrected." He nodded slowly. "Okay," then went back to his food. Simple. Children often accept truth more easily than adults. But after he went to bed, Lena sat alone in the living room, the article open on her phone. Her name, printed, permanent, she felt exposed, vulnerable, and strangely steady at the same time. The next morning, Daniel called. Corporate has reached out again. They are requesting a meeting regarding policy updates. Policy updates. Not just settlement, not just quiet resolution. Public pressure was shifting something. You think they are serious. I think they want to control the narrative before it controls them. She almost laughed. Narrative. The thing that had nearly crushed her was now being managed strategically. That afternoon, a small update appeared on the store's website. Commitment to responsible loss prevention practices. Enhanced verification procedures before escalation. It was vague, but it was visible. Lena drove past the store again that evening. The parking lot was busy. People moving in and out. Unaware of internal memos and mediation documents. Inside, near the entrance, a new sign was posted at eye level. "For your safety and ours. All security alerts are fully reviewed before any further action." Fully reviewed. She stood there for a moment, reading it twice. Her humiliation had once been contained inside a gray office. Now its echo was printed publicly. She did not feel triumphant. She felt tired and relieved. Because this had not been about revenge. It had been about context, full footage, complete angles. As she walked back to her car, she noticed the security guard glance at the sign briefly before returning to his post. It was subtle, but it mattered. Her weakness had not vanished. She still felt uneasy seeing cameras overhead, still folded her receipts carefully, still remembered 6:43 p.m., but something else lived alongside that memory now. Evidence, documentation, policy language. Her voice, recorded in more than one place. Humiliation had once tried to shrink her into silence. Instead, it had widened the frame. And even if the store never said sorry out loud, even if comments online never fully agreed, the story was no longer cropped, and that was enough. The policy update did not go viral. It did not explode across national headlines. It simply existed, quietly, like most meaningful changes do. A week after the website update, Daniel forwarded Lena an internal memo that had surfaced during Marissa's ongoing case. It had been obtained through preliminary discovery discussions. Subject line plain: Loss Prevention Protocol Clarification. Lena read it slowly. All associates must review all available camera angles prior to mention of law enforcement. Escalation language should not be used until verification is complete. Her fingers trembled slightly. There it was. In corporate language, what she had insisted on in that gray office, what they had once dismissed as procedure, now reframed, clarified. She leaned back in her chair at the kitchen table. Caleb was in his room practicing a recorder for music class. The high-pitched notes drifted down the hallway, uneven and determined. Ordinary sounds, ordinary life, but beneath it, something fundamental had shifted. Her phone buzzed. Marissa, they're offering public apology language now. Lena's breath caught. Public. That word carried weight. Because Marissa had chosen not to settle quietly, she had pushed further. The witnesses had stayed firm. The article had gained traction. And now the company was recalibrating again. What kind of language? Lena typed. Acknowledging premature escalation and committing to policy reform. Lena stared at the message, her chest filled with something unexpected. Not jealousy, not regret, pride. Because the foundation had already been cracked once before. Because the first documented incomplete review before escalation had existed in a file. Because she had insisted on language, even if it had been private at the time. Patterns do not collapse from a single push. They weaken from repeated pressure. Later that evening, Lena sat on the porch steps watching the sky shift into dusk. A neighbor watered plants. A car engine started across the street. Life did not feel dramatic. It felt steady. But beneath the steadiness was awareness. She thought back to the night of the alarm, the heat in her face, the tightness in her throat, the instinct to apologize for something she had not done. Her weakness had not been stupidity. It had been conditioning. A lifetime of being polite, non-confrontational, quick to smooth discomfort. The system had relied on that reflex. Most people fold under accusation because the shame is unbearable, because authority feels absolute, because escalation sounds terrifying. Police, law enforcement, procedure, big words, heavy words. She had nearly folded too. The memory still stung. That small voice in her head that had whispered, "Just sign whatever they give you. Make it stop." She did not judge that version of herself anymore. She understood her. Fear seeks relief, but relief is not always justice. Her phone buzzed again, this time from Daniel. They want to invite both you and Marissa to a roundtable discussion with corporate leadership about community trust. Lena let out a slow breath. Roundtable? Community trust. Language had evolved quickly. You think it's genuine, she replied. I think it's strategic. But strategy can still create change. She considered it. Public setting, corporate leaders, conversation. It sounded intimidating. Her weakness flickered again. What if I freeze? What if I sound emotional? What if they twist my words? But another voice answered quietly. What if your presence alone shifts something further? She stood and walked inside, past the folder labeled Personal Records. Paused, opened it. The letter still crisp. Incomplete review prior to escalation. The phrase no longer felt like a wound. It felt like leverage. She closed the folder gently. Texted Daniel, "I'll attend." The next morning, she drove Caleb to school. At the drop-off line, he looked at her. "Are you still famous on the internet?" She laughed softly. "No. Just part of a story." He shrugged. "Cool." Then ran toward the building. Children adapt quickly. Adults carry things longer. As she pulled away, she noticed something else. Yet she was no longer checking the rearview mirror for imaginary flashing lights. No longer bracing for sudden alarms. The humiliation had once felt permanent. Now it felt integrated. Part of her history, not her identity. And somewhere inside a corporate database, and now perhaps inside a policy manual, the phrase "full contextual review before escalation" was embedded. Her voice had helped put it there. Not because she was fearless, not because she was loud, but because she had refused to accept a cropped version of herself. And that refusal had rippled outward, quietly, persistently, until even the cameras had to adjust their angle. The round table was scheduled for a Saturday morning in a conference room above one of the larger store locations across town. Neutral space, glass walls, long table, coffee in silver carafes. The invitation had described it as a community dialogue. Lena almost did not go. Friday night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying worst-case scenarios. What if they minimize everything again? What if they thank us politely and change nothing? What if I look naive sitting at a table with executives? Her weakness did not whisper this time. It argued. You already settled. You already got compensation. Why reopen yourself? Because silence protects them. The counter voice was quieter but firmer. Saturday morning she dressed simply. Gray sweater, dark jeans, no blazer. She did not want to look like she was entering court again. She wanted to look like herself. Marissa was already there when Lena arrived. They had only exchanged emails before. In person, Marissa looked younger than Lena expected. Early 30s. Tired eyes. Determined posture. They hugged awkwardly. "Thank you," Marissa said quietly. "For what?" "For starting this." Lena shook her head. "I didn't start it. It was already happening." Corporate leadership entered minutes later, vice president of operations, regional manager, the asset protection manager from Lena's original incident. She looked slightly different. Less rigid, more cautious, the vice president began. "We recognize recent concerns regarding our loss prevention practices. We are committed to rebuilding trust." Rebuilding? Lena listened carefully. Words had been used before. She had learned to listen for specifics. Marissa spoke first. "I was threatened with police before anyone verified the second camera angle." The vice president nodded. "We have revised our training to require full review prior to mention of law enforcement." Revised. Documented. Lena felt a quiet confirmation settle inside her. That sentence had not existed months ago. She spoke next. "When you show someone cropped footage, you are not just investigating. You are shaping a story about them." The room stilled. The vice president leaned slightly forward. "That was not our intention. Intention does not erase impact." Her voice was calm. She surprised herself with how steady it sounded. When police are mentioned prematurely, it changes the emotional balance. It pressures people to comply even if they are innocent. The asset protection manager finally spoke. "We are implementing de-escalation protocols." Lena held her gaze. Good. Because most people will not push back. They will sign whatever you put in front of them to make it stop. Silence followed, heavy, honest. The vice president asked carefully, What would meaningful trust rebuilding look like from your perspective? Lena considered the question. Transparency. Clear signage explaining verification process. Consistent written clarification when mistakes happen. Not gift cards, not vague apologies. Documentation. The regional manager scribbled notes. It felt strange, being listened to, not dismissed, Marissa added. And stop assuming that hesitation at checkout equals theft. The asset protection manager looked uncomfortable. We use behavioral indicators. Lana responded quietly. Behavioral indicators can be biased. The word hung there. Biased, not accusatory, just real. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. Some answers were polished, some felt rehearsed, but some felt genuine. Especially when an assistant manager admitted quietly that associates often felt pressure to reduce shrink numbers quickly. Pressure trickles downward. Targets, metrics, loss prevention bonuses. Systems create behavior, not just individuals. Lena left the meeting feeling something unfamiliar, not vindication, not victory, responsibility, because now she understood more of the structure. It was not one malicious manager. It was a culture built around suspicion and speed. Correcting that required more than one mediation. It required continued attention. Outside, sunlight reflected off the parking lot. Customers pushed carts below, unaware of the meeting above them. Marissa walked beside her toward the stairs. Do you think they meant it? I think they meant parts of it. They both laughed softly. It was enough for now. As Lena drove home, she passed the store where it all began. The exit gate stood quiet. The sign about a full review still posted. She did not feel fear anymore. She felt awareness. The alarm at 6:43 p.m. had once defined the narrative. Now it was simply the opening scene. The rest of the story had been written because she refused to accept the first version. Not perfectly, not loudly, but persistently. And persistence, she was learning, reshapes systems more effectively than rage. At home, Caleb met her at the door. Did you win? She smiled faintly. It wasn't about winning. He frowned. Then what? It was about making sure something unfair doesn't keep happening. He thought about that for a second, then nodded. Okay, and ran back to his game. Simple. Direct. Sometimes clarity really was that uncomplicated. Lena stood in the doorway a moment longer, breathing in the ordinary air of her home. The humiliation had not disappeared. It had transformed. Into boundary, into language, into policy lines printed in training manuals, and into a woman who no longer flinched at the sound of her own voice. The first time Lena heard the alarm again, it did not belong to her. It happened on a Wednesday evening. She was in line at the same store, 3 carts back from the exit, when the red light flashed and the gate gave that sharp, metallic scream. Her body reacted before her mind did. Shoulders tightening, breath shortening. Heat rising behind her ears. The sound was the same. 6:43 p.m. Lived inside that frequency now. A teenage girl stood frozen at the gate, earbuds still in, a pack of bottled water in her cart. A younger security associate stepped forward quickly. Ma'am, step aside, please. The girl looked confused. I paid. The words were almost identical to Lena's own months ago. Lena felt the old instinct surface. Look away. It's not your problem. Stay small. But she did not look away. She watched. The associate held up a hand, then paused. Checked something on his handheld device, spoke quietly into his earpiece. The girl shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the customers around her. Lena noticed something different this time. No mention of police. No immediate march toward the back office. After a short wait, another employee approached and said calmly, "Let's verify something quickly at the register." The tone was lower, less performative. They walked together, not as a spectacle, but as a conversation. 2 minutes later, the girl returned, slightly embarrassed but not shattered. "It was a double scan error," the employee said gently. "You're good. No alarmist language, no threat, no gray office." The gate reset. The red light disappeared. Lena felt her heartbeat slow gradually. She realized she had been gripping the cart handle tightly. Her palms were damp. The weakness was still there, that reflex, that fear. It had not vanished, but it no longer controlled her. When she reached the exit and passed through without incident, she stepped into the cool air and paused. She was not responsible for every alarm, not every incident, but she had helped change the response. That mattered. At home that night, she found herself thinking about the teenage girl's face, the quick flash of confusion, the flicker of embarrassment, the way humiliation can land in a split second and linger for months. If the response had been different months ago, Lena might never have pushed back. She might have accepted the story written for her. Sometimes it takes a fracture to reveal the fault line underneath. Her phone buzzed later that evening. "Daniel, Marissa's case settled today. Public apology included. Policy revision referenced." Lena read the message twice. Public apology. Policy revision referenced. It was more than she had received. More visible. More permanent. She did not feel envy. She felt completion. 2 records now. 1 private acknowledgement, 1 public. Patterns weaken when exposed to light. She typed back, "Good," then set the phone down and sat quietly in the living room. The television played softly in the background. Caleb was asleep. The house felt calm. She let her mind wander back to the gray office months ago. The cropped footage, the threat of police, her shaking hands, her small voice asking to see the full video. That moment had felt insignificant, almost desperate. But it had been the pivot, not because she was fearless, because she was unwilling to accept partial truth. She realized something else, too. The system had not changed overnight. It had shifted incrementally, sign by sign, memo by memo, conversation by conversation. And she had been part of that shift, not as a headline, not as a hero, as a citizen who insisted on context. Her weakness still surfaced sometimes, when reading online comments, when seeing her name in print, when hearing that metallic alarm sound. But weakness did not negate strength. It coexisted with it. She stood and walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer where she kept important documents. The folder labeled "Personal Records" still sat there. She did not open it. She did not need to. The letter inside had done its work. The narrative was no longer cropped. Not for her, not entirely for others. And even if new incidents would occur in the future, even if policies required constant reinforcement, she knew something now that she had not known before. Authority is not infallible. Procedure is not always just, and cameras do not tell the full story unless someone insists on seeing the whole frame. She turned off the kitchen light. The house fell quiet. Outside, somewhere in town, security gates would still beep, but escalation no longer came automatically, because incomplete review before escalation was now written into policy, and written into her, not as a scar, as a standard. Part 12. The last time Lena heard the alarm scream, she did not flinch. She was standing near the front entrance holding a basket with bananas, yogurt, and a loaf of bread. A father ahead of her pushed a stroller through the exit. The gate flashed red for half a second. The sound cut through the store. Sharp, metallic, familiar. Her body registered it, but it did not seize. An associate stepped forward calmly. "Sir, 1 moment. Let me double-check the scan." The father looked confused, but not terrified. He nodded. The associate checked the screen at the register instead of escorting him away. A short exchange, a quick correction. The alarm stopped. The stroller rolled out. No threat, no gray office, no word, police. Lena stood still for a moment longer than necessary. Not because she was afraid, because she was measuring the distance between then and now. 6:43 p.m. The red light. Step aside. We have footage. Police. The humiliation had once filled her entire field of vision. Now it was a memory layered beneath something else. Context, procedure adjusted, language revised. She paid for her items. $41 and some change. The receipt printed. She folded it, almost out of habit now, but without urgency. At the exit, she paused again. Not out of fear, out of recognition. The sign about full review remained posted. Small, plain, easy to ignore, but she could not ignore it, because she knew what it represented. She'd stepped outside into late afternoon sunlight. The parking lot buzzed with normal life. Engines starting, carts clattering, someone arguing gently over a shopping list. Ordinary. The most powerful word she could think of. Ordinary. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Corporate finalized updated training modules this week. They cited community input. Community input. She smiled faintly. Not her name, not Marissa's. But the effect was there. You did good, Daniel added. She typed back. We did. Because it had not been just her. It had been the teenage girl. The older man who wished he had pushed back. Marissa and her witnesses. Even the associate who hesitated before escalating. Systems shift when enough small resistances accumulate. At home, Caleb was building something on the living room floor out of cardboard and tape. What are you making? She asked. A camera system. He grinned. It sees everything. She laughed softly. Does it see the whole picture? He thought about that. Not if you point it the wrong way. She felt the sentence land deeper than he intended. Exactly. Later that evening, after dishes were washed and the house quieted, Lana sat alone in the dim kitchen. She did not feel victorious. She did not feel famous. She felt changed. In subtle ways. She no longer apologized reflexively when questioned. She no longer accepted incomplete explanations at work. She no longer equated authority with infallibility, and most of all, she no longer feared insisting on the full frame. Her weakness still visited sometimes, when reading harsh comments, when remembering how small she felt in that gray office, when hearing a metallic beep unexpectedly. But weakness was no longer something she tried to erase. It was the reminder of what was at stake. Dignity is fragile. Trust is delicate. Narratives are powerful. That first cropped clip had almost rewritten her identity, almost reduced her to a suspect in her own story. Instead, she'd asked for the full footage. That simple request had unraveled a pattern. Not perfectly, not permanently, but measurably. She opened the drawer and pulled out the folder one last time. The letter inside remained crisp. Incomplete review prior to escalation. The phrase that once stung now felt foundational. She did not need to read it again. She knew it by heart. She returned the folder to its place, turned off the kitchen light. As she walked toward her bedroom, she passed the front window. In the distance, faintly, she could see the glow of the grocery store's lights beyond the trees. It no longer felt like a place of humiliation. It felt like a place where something had been corrected, where a cropped narrative had been widened, where a woman who once trembled under fluorescent lights had learned to steady her voice. The alarm might still sound some evenings. Cameras would still watch. Mistakes would still happen. But escalation would not come as easily now, because someone had insisted on context, because someone had refused the gift card, because someone had said, "Show me the full footage." And that insistence had echoed far beyond aisle 12. Far beyond 6:43 p.m., it had become a boundary, a standard, a quiet form of justice that did not require shouting, only persistence. And in the end, That persistence had said something louder than the alarm ever could. The camera can only tell the truth when you demand to see the whole frame. The story ends there, not with applause, not with revenge, but with a woman walking through automatic doors without flinching, and knowing that if the red light ever flashes again, she will not shrink. She will ask for the full angle, every time. If you've ever been accused of something you didn't do, if you've ever felt that heat in your face when everyone around you assumes the worst, you know how small a moment like that can make you feel. But here's the truth. Silence protects systems. Documentation protects people. If this story meant something to you, if you believe context matters and assumptions can destroy real lives, take a second to support the channel. Like the video so more people see stories like this. Subscribe if you believe everyday people deserve to tell the full version of what happened to them. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been judged before anyone heard your side? Your voice might be the one that helps someone else refuse a cropped version of their own story. I'll see you in the next one.